Welcome to the Naked Gospel, where shame has no power, God's glory is boundless, and we get to carry that story in our bodies. Here we have conversations about sex, singleness, marriage, pornography, parenting, everything beyond and in between. We're featured on every major podcast platform, as well as YouTube. So please like, subscribe, share, so that you can join the movement that is already achieving a revival of sexual integrity throughout the entire kingdom.
Hey everybody, you're here with Wailer and old, good friend, sturdy, reliable as they come. This is Marshall Shank. For those of you that have been along for the ride for some years, you'll remember that Marshall used to be the guy. He was my predecessor. He was the fellow that gave me all the secrets and the insider knowledge of what I was doing when I got into the position. So you definitely set up the platform so that there would ever be a place for me to get in trouble. And now we've got a few years of you've been out of the ministry full time, but still very much active in kingdom work. So I'm just looking forward to hearing a lot of your perspective. Yeah. You've had some distance. You've been able to look back over the years. You're in a different employ now. You're in a field of study. And what did things look like to you? But also for the people that remember you from the podcast, what's new in the life of Marshall Shank?
2 kids.
Two kids.
Yeah, that's probably the newest. 2 boys, Wilder and Walker. Yeah, that's been the most demanding new thing. That would probably be the best way to put it. They're awesome. So yeah, they were born exactly 18 months apart. And so so that's post, I think. It's hard to remember. Yeah, with Wilder being 2 and around that same time that we had Wilder for the first. So yeah, that's.
I think you guys were expecting.
Yeah, right.
But
on the transition,
fully delivered.
Yeah, that's right. Because we went on a last trip, and that was kind of in the midst of trying to figure out what's next. So
yeah. So while you were birthing a new direction in life, your wife was getting ready to birth first baby boy, making you a proper baby daddy.
That's true. Yeah, it's good to be a baby daddy. It's been a surprising gift to be a dad. It's been it's top 3 favorite things in life at the present moment, for sure. So ping pong 1. I'm just kidding. No, they're great. So it's been fun. They're a handful. They're named minus Walker. He's crawling. So he's getting there, but yeah, it's been fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been able to see you living the rad dad life.
Yeah.
And it's obvious. It's all over you. Just how much you love that pocket.
Yeah.
If it ever vexes you, which, I know there's stretches where it's just, can we go to bed?
Yeah.
The whole reverse hostage negotiation. Can you just stay in there? Yeah. But I've seen you enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. It's I once heard it stated that when you have kids, your capacity for joy and enjoyment goes to, from 50 to 1,000, but also your capacity for negative emotion drops to negative 1,000. It's like, that's definitely true, but, I wouldn't trade it for anything. So that tells you how I'm oriented towards it.
Okay.
Yeah. But
what did it do in your dynamics with Jill? Because you guys had some years together in marriage. You got your rhythms developed. There's a style, there's expectations, and then boom, babies.
Yeah. It's a good question. What did it do? I think it highlighted the areas that needed work, and then subsequently highlighted the areas that we were strong in. And so, lack of sleep is a torture technique. And so it's hard to be fully you when you're sleep deprived and up at 3 a.m. and thinking this is never going to end. And so you see a lot more of a person in that kind of environment. And so I think, ups and downs, ebbs and flows. I think over time, my perspective is that it's shown us both who we really are, and then challenged us to be able to create new rhythms, new language, prioritize our marriage more, because otherwise, when that kind of demand is impressed on the relationship, it's easy to take it for granted. And I think we were married for 5 years before we had the boys. And so I think a lot of that, for me, my experience was that I think I took for granted the relationship. And so hard to do that when there's kids and they're demanding so much from you. So yeah, so it highlighted the things that need to be worked on and then gave us encouragement. Just not quite the right word. Deeper and more long-term meaning for fleshing out those things in a way that's productive and beneficial for us both over a long period of time. Yeah, so they're a real gift.
Yeah. The way you describe it, I feel like I'm seeing the time of the relationships differently.
Mm-hmm.
For a man to get married in the first place, there has to be some degree of not being completely selfish.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. The marriage.
Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. There might be a cat out there.
Yeah, right.
But the premise of it is he's now vowed to another. And even without a Christian worldview, you're tied to this person.
Right.
And so a marriage in and of itself should mean some kind of, I'm going to give, right? They might not have an eternal mindset, as we say in the biz. There might be some in-case measures they've got in their own little subconscious prenuptial arrangement. But in the end, he's giving himself to a woman and should be invested in her ultimate good.
Right.
What does she need?
Yeah.
What are the things that I let go of so that she has what she needs? In a marriage, it's still going to be just the two of you. And tentatively, you'll expire around the same time. God forbid any tragedy comes beforehand.
Right.
But the measurement of your years ends with each other. And then you bring a child into that. And now there's consequences that will outlast you.
Right.
And if your children portend progeny, they'll outlast you for a long time. Do you find that imagination has a different effect on the kind of decisions y'all make together?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a realization to your point of the responsibility past our lives, right? And even, I think there's a lot to be made for even in those, if we're lucky enough to make it to those times in our life where we're in need, right? Again, to be able to build adults that are self-reliant and capable, hopefully God-fearing, right? So that not only can we create something for us in the time that we have, so that we're not alone. That's ideal, over the long period of time. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have the mentality of legacy, right? What you described, this conceptualization of me existing past my own lifespan. I don't know if I've ever thought of it in that explicit of terms, but there definitely is a orientation towards raising the child so that it's less structured as it relates to whatever me is throughout the time, but rather ensuring whoever they are actually achieving all that God would hope for them to be. Right. And so
I think that's the wavelength I'm on.
Yeah.
Legacy can be used in a really selfish connotation. Doesn't have to be.
Right.
But, how much of me gets to be immortal.
Right.
And seeing a residual trace of you left in a genome, right? When I'm asking about your imagination on decisions, it's more in the vein of the consequences that outlast you a long time.
I see, yeah.
And yeah, there's legacy in your impact on people.
Yeah.
But like when you're gone, these people still exist.
Right.
And there's still some wake of you, things you did and said, maybe neglect, but there's impact that continues. That stuff that outlasts you. Does that come with more weight, specifically in your relationship with Jill?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's that's what I mean. And when I say that there's more direct orientation towards meaning is your point. It's like back to the aside as it relates to legacy. It's like I'll go to Old City Cemetery, and a group of guys will pray every Monday morning there. It's really fun. It's a weird place, but
And you didn't invite
sorry,
me.
yeah, it's awesome. We got like keys to the chapel there, which is cool. So 6 a.m. and
I have zero jealousy.
yeah, I can hear it.
None.
Yeah, it's just perfect holiness. Yeah. But I had the thought, it's like I'm seeing these tombstones of names that, like there's Civil War vets there, right? And it's like, I had this thought as I walked into work. It's like I can see their name and I can see when they were born and I can see when they died. And then I have some conceptualization based off the fact that they're in a Confederate cemetery of what they did at a certain point in their life. But that means has no bearing on what it means to know them. And I was thinking this as I was walking into work, and it's like, this is my life, this moment right now, thinking these things as I'm walking into work, and no one will know them, right? It's like you could hypothetically take that name and go back and maybe build a family tree out to be able to see what you're talking about. Then maybe you get lucky and you get a notebook a love letter that he wrote back so you can get some sense. But even still, it's like, you know what it's like to write a love letter in a moment. It's like you're very complicated across your span of your life. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to kids provide evidence for the kind of thing that you attended to. Not perfectly, right? Because they're their own individuals, but there is something to that of like, is the orientation in which I've directed my life, does it have a long-term impact that's good, right? Or, worth it, I think is probably a better way of the way that I actually think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitely, and part of that being in my relationship with Jill, it's like, well, I know I have 2 boys, and especially in the topic that we're talking about today, and that I spent a lot of time in, it's like the thing that I can do more than anything in order to orient them is not teach them not to watch something, but teach them how to orient themselves properly.
Mm-hmm.
The way you do that is you orient yourself properly, right? And so, and specifically with my relationship with Jill, it's like I want my boys to have a framework of what love is because they watched me in my marriage with Jill, and so ping pong's not one. I would say she is, right? It's like if I can orient myself towards her, that's the right orientation because my kids will be gone one day, God willing, right? And she and I will remain in that relationship. And so yes, definitely. It's bigger than them, right? That relationship, but oriented for their well-being. And they encourage me in that. It's like there's a embedded meaning and purpose that's now past whatever good comes out solely within the relationship that I have with her as a husband. There's some additional responsibility and expectation and purpose that's derived by them being there. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but
we are here for the long-windedness.
Yeah, good.
It is the entire purpose. And you and I are nothing if not long-winded. Let me give you your own.
Yeah. I've been accused of a lot, and that one sticks.
That one's there. Yeah. Perennial. Yeah. Part of the legacy, as it were.
Yes.
I mean...
long-winded. Marshall Shank died whenever. Long-winded.
That's written over the dash.
Yeah.
Whatever happened in these years.
Long-winded. That's true.
I want to talk about the transition between your years and our years. But before we do that, we got to get another update on you.
Yeah.
So since no longer being director of outreach at Proven Ministries, you've had not a drastic transition.
Yeah.
It's a different career path now.
Yeah.
Same vein, but a little tangential.
Yeah.
Can we get that update?
Yeah, definitely. I am months away from graduating with a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So that would be the licensure path specifically. I actually started doing that while I was still here, with this explicit purpose of just being better with the people that would come to you at a booth at a conference or on a phone call with a guy who's struggling. And so originally the orientation was I don't feel equipped in the ways that I need to be in order to have that phone call. But once leaving, I had gotten a job at Liberty University's Counseling and Psychological Services doing intake counseling. And so just receiving people, gathering the necessary information and scheduling them while working through the school. So, so I'm almost done. Hopefully.
That one deserves a little pause.
Yeah, sure.
When you say gathering the necessary information,
right.
Only because we've talked, I have some context for that.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just like eye color, weight, right?
Yeah.
It's you doing intake counseling with them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's different it is a very different experience than counseling as a therapist, as opposed to an intake counselor. Just basic, in that there are closed-ended questions and information that I'm trying to gather as opposed to explore. Try to retain that for the relationship that they would have with the person that we're sending them to. But yes, it's not, well, there is a component of what's your name, but they're very brief, and at the top, everything else is conceptualized around, well, why are they here and what's going on in their life across biology, psychology, socially, even spiritually. And so, which helps me make the assessment of, I think, what would be the best way forward for them as out of the options that we have for them. And so I did that for 2 years while, I guess it's been 2 years now, while going through school. And then now, since the fall, I started actually seeing my own clients. And so I knew it was different because I had some experience with that in the schooling, but only when I started actually seeing patients for more than just one time, for 60 minutes. It's a very stark difference, relationally.
You have several people in a week when you're doing the first 2 years of a lot of the intake sessions. You have an hour.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
You might do, let's be hospitable, let's establish familiarity. How are you today?
Right.
But then once you're past the tone setting, it's just an excavation.
Right.
Because you need data.
Right.
You need purpose.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing clients of your own. That story continues for more weeks. Do you see people or interact with people differently for your years in the counseling vein?
Yes. Yeah. I think probably the thing it's done for me is I fall into this trap a lot. I did last week with a client. I can imagine that I know the answer. I assume that I know what's going on, but it's remarkable to me that I don't even often know what's going on with me. So the presumption that I would know what's going on with somebody else who's not me and I don't know much about is pretty striking. And so I think that's shifted in my own, when even just my own internal responses to things, like being more connected with that and then being curious about that has made me a more curious person with the people that I'm around. How much of what I see being presented is a byproduct of things that are unknown to the person itself, themselves. And so that's given me, I think, I would like to think more accurately that gives me a more humility as it relates to engaging with people. It's made me more curious. I can fall still into the trap of assuming I know what's going on. But almost every time that happens when I'm with a client, it's because I'm not dealing with them any longer. I'm dealing with something that's going on in me, which means that I still have more work for me to be able to investigate. So it's broadened my framework out. My supervisor said last week, if you find yourself trying to speed up, you're dealing with you, not them. And so I think oftentimes in the past, it was like I wanted to win. Win's probably not the right word, but convince, right? It's like convince you that this is the way forward. This is what you ought to do. And since hearing that, looking back, thinking how much of what I was sharing was a reflection of what I thought I needed, or me talking to parts of me that I haven't quite explored or have put away because for whatever reason, there's tons of reasons for that. But shame, guilt, the primary ones for me. And so, yeah, I think it's broadened that out of just general curiosity for the other.
There's been a lot of talk in recent years. I feel like I started hearing it maybe a decade ago, and it just continues to saturate more in the years since. You hear about narrative theology, right, instead of topical or systemic.
Yep.
And then in the context of counseling, there's a lot more integration of story.
Yeah, narrative theory specifically doing that. Yeah.
This is a curiosity of mine.
Yeah.
I've been teasing at this for not that long. It might only have been a month or so. This particular question has been nagging at me. And your interactions with people, it's two-parter. I want to start with one. For the density, for the frequency of people that you're interacting with in your craft now, do you have a different perspective on what constitutes a mature person, a healthy person in their development?
Yeah. Do you want to give me the second part, or you want me to run with this? Okay, fair.
I'm going to keep you on the hook.
Okay, fair enough. Good. Keeping you guys on the hook, too. Ask that again. Sorry, my joke threw me off.
And that's why I didn't do two parts.
Yeah.
I know you.
I
knew where this was going.
Long-winded and
Should have interrupted you. Are you? No, I'm not. Just proceed.
easily distracted. Yeah.
I want to win.
Yeah. Fair.
I want to convince you this is the way forward. Now, do you have, has your perspective on what counts, what constitutes a mature person, a healthy person in their development?
Yeah.
Has that shifted any for your interactions in counseling?
Yeah. Well, I can speak for me in my experience of, so in counseling, when there's, I think it was Freud, forgive me. Freud talked about countertransference and transference. It was in the relationship that you have between client and counselor, oftentimes there's tension that existed outside of the relationship. It was being brought in. So classic cases, you remind me of X, and so I start treating you like X, right? Or parts of their story remind me of my story, so I start reacting to it as such, countertransference. And so I deal a lot with that. I guess that's kind of the purpose of internship generally. At least it has been for me, as trying to work through those things. And so conceptually, as it relates to insight, which I think would probably be a factor, or it would be a object of maturity, a goal of maturity is insight. I realized early on that I really liked clients that were intellectually insightful. They knew what was going on. And I realized that because that's how I am, right? I can tell you what it is. And it seems to me that knowing it, right, being able to have a thought, the cognitive framework for what took place is the means by which you're insightful, right? And so if I read all the things, if I listen to all the things, if I know it, and then if I can teach it, it means that I know it, right? And while I think that that's part of it, I learned that what my insightful clients need, what my intellectually insightful clients need is the counterbalance to that, which is the emotional, right? So if the banner's insight, you have intellectual insight and then emotional insight, right? Maybe there's more, but where I've gotten to so far, those are the two. And so my own personal experience is that I had a lot of intellectual insight as it relates to my own story, the things that I had gone through, but I lacked the emotional awareness within that. And so I think it's one coin, two different sides. And then the means by which you become more insightful, i.e. mature, is through developing those two things out. Because where I came from is like emotions were something that you avoided. They got in the way of being a gritty, resilient person. And so you just put them away, right? You stuff them down. And consequently, I wouldn't say I'm an angry person, but Anger is a byproduct of that, but then shame, guilt, and hiding, which would be the orientation that I would wrestle with more than anything, also is a byproduct of that. And so I think when dealing with clients from the perspective of being a counselor, that's been my awareness of how maturity shifted, right? Can you tell me what's wrong? Do you know, right? And if not, fair enough, right? Life's complicated, but can you also feel that? Can you sit with that well? Or can you actually engage with the fact that you are a being with feelings and they're real? Right is not really, I don't think, a good framework for feelings. They just are.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you sit with those things? Can you be with them? And then oftentimes my experience has been healing's found when both of those are used well, right? For me now, because I can tell you what's wrong when I feel that well and I sit with those emotions well, I feel like I've been freed from those things. They don't have as much control over to be able to dictate what I do and don't do, which is why I think insight's an important element of maturity. So yeah, that would probably be, that's what comes to mind for your first part.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering.
You're welcome.
The second part.
I couldn't forget.
Yeah.
On the hook.
Yeah. I recently read that self-awareness is the distance between your stressed self and your healthy self.
Mm-hmm.
You see little captions all the time, memes, Reddit threads, the pervade wisdom of social media, right? Where do this to somebody and then you find out who they really are.
Yeah.
Right. Lock them in a room, Wi-Fi doesn't work. You find out who they really are, Those things always seemed unfair, but I didn't have language for it until stress fell versus healthy. Oh yeah. You find out who they are when everything's not good.
Yeah.
You are getting the immature manifestation of them. Mm-hmm. But then there's more to their life where they're probably generous. They have things they do well. And then it helped to have that imagination of shortening the distance between when you're stressed and when you're healthy. And that maturity looks like when things go bad, you still respond well. And when you said feelings just are, it's like a healthy person is somebody that's not governed by them, but they're hospitable to their own feelings.
Right.
They make space for it.
Right.
They don't throw them out the door. It's like they sit at the table. You might have to tell them to shut up after a while, or at least quiet down some. You don't get to run the whole show here, but it's indicative of something that wants attention.
Right.
The negative emotions are alarming us. They're alerting us to something that's not right. It might even be something internal, and this is has nothing to do with all the stuff out there.
Right.
But we still need to pay attention to it.
Right.
What is this inviting us into? What do you think of when you imagine a mature person? What's the composite picture of a man that you want to continue to become more like throughout life?
Yeah. Your language of stressed versus healthy self is very reminiscent to the young false self versus the true self, right? Mm-hmm. He posited that what takes place within that gap, what's created within the gap of the false self and the true self is personas, masks we wear to be able to aim up. And so, right, because it's not as if we don't know that we're complicated and divided, and so we wear these masks that aren't really us, but they're images of the thing that we want to aim at. And I think for a long time, that was how I oriented myself. I had this guy out there that I wanted to attain, and the means by which I attained him was I pretended to be him, right? And I think there's something to that, right? It's like, I think there's a direct correlation between your attention and worship, right? And so what you're attending to, right, that ideal out there is helpful. But for me, that never really left room for, well, that's to say as if the means to becoming that person out there is just being better at wearing masks, right? Which is never actually really becoming. And I think the necessary focus would be, well, the question that I struggled with for the past 2 years is, what would it mean to not wear a mask? Right. And I think that's the invitation that Jesus has for us. It's like, for sinners, right? For the dead, while we were still sinners. Right? And so, well, is that true? Right? Or are you sure? Or do I have to make sure that I'm doing this? Right? And what's the relationship between those two things? And that's not a solved question for me. Still wrestling with it, which seems like basic gospel understanding, but here we are. But I had a moment, and I'm going to be long-winded. I was in the cemetery, and I was praying about that. And
It's the cemetery you go to without me
yeah,
and your other
I didn't really
friends.
want to press it. I was alone in this instance. They all stood me up last Monday. So
I know somebody that wouldn't have.
I know. I'm thinking that now. But I sat in a magnolia tree, yeah, and prayed about this and wrestled with this. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do then? Like, if I'm not supposed to do anything because it's already done, to Talestai, right? It is finished. It's like, okay, well, then what am I supposed to do? And what's the relationship between my obligation and love and devotion? And so how do I make sense of those things? And as I'm sitting there praying that and wrestling through that, and I'm walking out, and they have cedar trees that line the main drive, and they had limbed them recently, I guess. And there's a fresh cut, and I just like stuck my face on it and took a big deep breath in, It's like, oh, I didn't have to be compelled to do that. I enjoy that. Enjoy the smell of cedar wood, and it was compelling to me. It's like, oh. Right, and then Jill once told me, I was talking to her about this, and she was like, Marshall, you just have to ask for help. Just ask for help. Just ask. And I read in a book 2 days ago that some guy said that asking for help implies that I'm still doing. And I don't think that that's right. Or you just surrender, you let go. And I think asking for help is effectively surrender. I can't do it is the admission to I need help, Right. And so more and more maturity looks like whatever it looks like out there, what it means right now is that, no matter what. And so I don't know what to make of that. I don't particularly like it because I like, right, there's a goal. There's the ultimate aim being like Christ. But if I think too much about the tangible practicalities of that, it always for me turns to how others might view me as opposed to who I am, right? So what you were talking about, the congruence between who I say that I am versus who I am, the integrity between those two things, what I say and what I do. So I stopped doing that because, well, I had the realization the other day that I'm by far the person who thinks more in the race of thinking about me. I'm first by a large margin. Which is to say that nobody's really considering that, right? Just me. And so if my aim is who do I want to be, it becomes others focused. What's the perception of others on me?
Oh.
And here recently, who I want to be, for me, has just been reduced to, what does it mean to ask for help in this moment? Just bare bones. What does it mean to surrender in this space? And that's easier said than done because, well, I like the idea that people think that I'm smart and competent, right? But there's space for me for being incompetent. And I'm not just competent, I'm also a lot of other things. And so just letting go, just saying, help. I need help. I'm aiming up. Well, it's evidenced by the fact that I'm asking for help. Right. So I don't have to worry about that conceptualization of, am I doing the right thing? And in that, the stuff falls underneath it for me, Whereas before I put the cart before the horse and I do these things in order to attain whatever that may be, righteousness, approval from God, whatever sense of worth that my self is on that day, right, from others' perceptions. It shifts to something more intimate and whole, right, not part.
Mm.
So I think maturity would be something like that. Somebody who has a conscious awareness of the difference between the false self and the true self, and them orienting themselves towards the surrender of that, whatever it might mean, to be able to see that through. Because that's dark, man. Like, it's always a big ask and an intake. It's like you're asking trauma history, and you're doing it as if you were asking them all the other things. Does anybody in your family have any mental health diagnoses? Is a question. You ever skip any meals? Often forget to eat, right? Have you been sexually abused or raped? It's just one of the ticks among 100 of them, that you're asking in that space. And asking somebody to stare in that space is not fun. And it's oftentimes feels unfair. But I think I know Jordan Peterson said the only way through is through. You take more of the thing that poisons you until you turn it into a tonic that girdles the world around you.
The only way out is through, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No getting around it, no getting away from it.
Right. I see a tunnel when he says that, right? It's like, you don't get over it. And you can try. And it's hard for me to blame you if you do, right? Because it's painful. And there's plenty of ways in my life that I'm actively trying to avoid things. Right? We all know what that's like. Our phones are amazing at doing that for us. Right? But the question is, I guess the question is that who I want to be? Is that what I want to aim at? And so, does that answer your second part?
Yeah, by a lot. We always have this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever we meet up, however long we talk, we always need another week in the woods.
Right. Yeah.
You started all of that with the Jungian language of masks.
Yeah.
Masks in the middle of healthy, unhealthy, true, false, stressed, well-oriented. Are you saying something like a mature man is free to live without any masking? And that's evidenced in your chapter of life now by being free to ask, being free to ask people to supplement your need.
Yeah, free is a weird word there that I'm wrestling with. Because I think initially, instead of a mature man is one who's free without, is rather with the insight comment as it relates to maturity is present to the gap, right? And you what's the word you use? Awareness. Self-awareness is the conceptualization of that within the Jungian language. And for the record, this is my translation of Jung, which is a poor translation because he's smarter than I'll ever be and difficult to understand. And so, yeah, I mean, he's not around to rebut me. So
for that, my favorite Jung line: learn all the theories, master all the techniques, but when another human soul is before you, be just another human soul.
Yeah, he's taught me a lot about that. Yeah, so I think to that point, it's like being present to that reality, that dichotomy. IFS, internal family systems, do you know much about that? It's a theory. Again, it'll be a butchered version from me. But it's really fun in a counseling room because you know what it's like to have like different parts of you war inside of you, right? You know what it's like a part of you wants to be right in an argument with your wife. And then a part of you recognizes that you need to, like, you're reacting because of this thing that was said 3 weeks ago. And then there's another part of you that it feels hurt, right? And all those parts of you actually do exist all at once in this present moment. And so
inside of me, there are no fewer than 15 wolves.
Yes.
At any time.
Yeah. And so parts work is a large part of IFS. So the framing would be no bad parts. So they have a mechanism to understand this where you have your core self is a language that they use, and there's 8 C's. It's very Southern Baptist oriented, right, with the alliteration, but I don't remember all of them, but courage, curiosity would be the 2 that come up for me when thinking about that. Creativity is another one. And so what you're trying to develop is a greater sense of core self. You also have protectors, which is another bander, and under those you have firefighters and you have managers. Managers are like a depressive state, right? It keeps you from feeling the things that you would rather not. Firefighters do what they sound like. They come in and they put the fire out when the managers didn't do their job, right? And so pornography is a big one. Eating disorders, right? You can see severe addiction, right? They come in and they solve the problem. And what they're trying to do is, well, there's exiles too. And these are the parts of us that we've banished for whatever reason, right? They're the weak kid who couldn't stand up to their stepdad, right? They're the one that got made fun of, and right, well, fill in the blank, right? We've exiled these parts of us that we don't want to touch. And so our protectors protect us from ever getting anywhere near that. And so part of IFS work is inviting those parts in and having conversations with them about, like, there's an intellectual part that tries to protect me. If I know it, I don't have to feel those things. Right. And so you can actually enter into conversations with those wolves to be able to, understand yourself more. It takes a lot of courage to do that, thereby building the core self, And I think an important note for IFS, because I'm sure if anybody's listening to this and they're training, they'll be yelling. The language of wolves is, right, the basic premise is that there's no bad parts, right? That's part of being curious. And I see this oftentimes within.
I like wolves.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I know you do, but their connotation is, I wouldn't want to be hanging out in the woods with them, alone in the dark in Alaska.
I think they'd like me, personally.
Hope you never
out there as well.
theory.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, with all due respect.
Well, I'm not getting invited to any graveyard prayer meetings, so what else am I going to do with my time?
Yeah, fair enough. 6 a.m. Alaska trips. Doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah. You're not invited.
Fair enough.
How does it feel?
I deserve it. Yeah. It hurts.
You can come.
Thanks. If it was a thing that I developed, this Wednesday morning thing, I would absolutely invite you, but just for the record.
You know it well enough to know I'm not going there that hour anyway, so listen.
I just needed you to admit it.
Yeah, I will. They already know. There's maybe 3 things I do with humor that are reliable. One of them is butthurt ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's all I've got.
It's a good persona.
Don't take my shtick away.
Just kidding.
It's how I manage the space in the middle. This is one of my masks, okay?
Got it.
Yeah.
I forgot where we were. Again, the jokes. And this is why we need weeks in the woods.
Looked to Alaska. We didn't go to the graveyard.
Wolves, no bad parts. Got it. Thank you. How did I help? I don't know. Yeah, I see this often. It's like it's not comfortable to say, right? If we're supposed to flee from sexual immorality, then being curious about our pornography use feels like sin, right? Being curious about the temptation and investigating it feels like it's something we ought not do. And I see that a lot, that there's a moral part of us, right, that comes in and says, you ought not, right, because it's bad. And it's just not helpful. fair enough. Like, we can make a moral claim as it relates to sin. I think that that's fair. But when it comes to understanding what's going on, I would like to think that there will be grace extended if we're curious to be able to orient ourselves away from it. Right. And so positioning yourself with the framework of no bad parts, it's like we're just trying to gain a deeper understanding of the impulses that we have that are going on inside of us that are pulling us. Ignoring them as if they don't exist, well, it doesn't work in my case. It often leads to much worse things. And so I think that that's what God means by pull it out into the light. Right? It's like, can you be curious about it? Can you wrestle with it?
It's not like he's going to be surprised.
Right. As if he doesn't know. Right. And so we have this, I have this intellectual and moral part that like to step in the gap and say, like, not safe. Don't go there. Right. And then like I use derogatory terms towards that firefighter, right? Because it's bad and it's wrong. And it's like, well, maybe, but at least let's give it some space to be able to share what it's hiding. Like, what is it protecting? It's doing something, and it's been useful. It's been useful. How? Whether or not it's long-term useful, whether or not it's good, that's not the same question, right? It's done something for us that we can at least be appreciative of, right? When I felt lonely, it's given me a split second of feeling not lonely, right? That's not nothing when you feel lonely, right? Now, only then can you come back and say, well, it also gives me a week worth of shame and guilt, right? And hiding that reinforces the action of feeling alone. But you don't get that if you don't say, hey, what's going on here? Well, I feel alone. It's like, okay, well, you're not working. Right? Appreciate you, but you're not working. I have to face the exile of the lonely child in order to, that just got really weird, but you get the point. It's like, I have to face Marshall when he was alone as a kid, and I have to sit with him and integrate, right? And so what's cool about the IFS principle is that you can think of all these different parts of you existing separately. And I forget what the term they use for it. It's maybe integration. I like that language. I don't know if it's theirs, but the integration of these parts. You can take a protector like pornography, and you can orient it in a way that helps you. Right? You can, once it has no purpose or function, right, because it's no longer protecting anything, the ultimate goal would be able to incorporate it to be able to help develop the core self. And I think, we talk about this a lot within this realm of like, the goal isn't to not look at women. The goal is to look at them rightly. Right? That's good IFS language for how to be able to make a part that used to lust and take and whatever the case may be, and reorient it and to shape it into something that assists the core self in becoming even greater. So Mercury balls is how it's like all coalescing in one, to where you are operating out of your core self, away from, not avoiding exiles with these different managers and protectors. So
I recently talked to Sam Jolman on the podcast. His book, The Sex Talk You Never Got.
Yeah, right.
One line, which we discussed at length, really good. He said that lust is not too much sexual desire. It's too little awe. And when you talk about seeing women right, like, they're never going to stop being sexual creatures.
Right.
And neither are we.
Yeah.
I don't want to make this thing too ex-girlfriend weird, but like, you and I are sexual creatures right now.
Yeah.
As we sit here.
Yeah.
Can't stop it.
Yeah. It wouldn't have been weird if you wouldn't have referenced the ex-girlfriend part.
Yeah.
You said that just.
But that's why the flags are there. It's a distance in the middle. It's a mask. All right. 15 wolves. Well, they got so many levers to pull on. But that business of seeing older women like mothers, seeing younger women like sisters, giving our wives certain monopolies where they are the sole proprietor of our eroticism. But we still have more sexuality that's going to present itself to the rest of our lives. And to be able to acknowledge the beauty of a woman and then not ruin that moment, to not sully that recognition. Right. We're going to ask her to stop being beautiful.
Right.
To stop being alluring?
Well, you see that a lot in marriages, right? It's I'm struggling to be specific because I've been to conferences and then I don't know who's watching this podcast, and I don't want them to go, "That's my story," that guy from that conference, it's all right. But I'm sure we're safe, but I'm nervous that maybe there's a chance that we're not. But
We just won't name them.
yeah, fair enough. I mean, I couldn't remember even if I wanted to, but jealousy will develop and create the thing that you would rather not want, right? And so what you think you want is a wife who's just sexual in your presence, but you don't get that because we're sexual beings. And so, the way to mitigate that is to never compliment them when they look good.
Mm.
So then the natural result of that, or shame them when they do. Right? Oh, you're right for whatever reason, right? So maybe you're nervous that your wife is going out with the girls and isn't going out with the girls, right? Whatever insecurity that you have. And so you encourage the behavior of, the thing that you hate, right? The thing that you would rather not have, right? Which is, I'm sure, a little sexual intimacy within your relationship with your wife, and then encouraging her to not be beautiful, right? And then you get what you wanted, and then you hate what you got, right? And so I've heard that story before.
Yeah.
Right. And
she wants to look nice
mm-hmm.
when she's out with her friends.
Yes.
It has nothing to do
right.
with wanting to attract another man's attention.
Right.
Women like to appreciate each other's beauty.
Right.
They like to celebrate each other's beauty.
Right.
And I've seen the guys that really take offense when she's making herself presentable
mm-hmm.
for a night out with the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
There's zero overtly sexual factor about it in her appetites,
right?
In her desires. Right. She's planning on coming back home to him happy.
Right. Yeah.
And
as if aiming at being beautiful is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you make it so because, that's what bitterness and resentful does,
Mm.
Bitterness and resentment. It fuels that. Right. It's like,
no, you're only allowed to be beautiful for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And only when I want that.
Right.
That's pretty dehumanizing.
It's a good definition of it. Yeah.
Let's schedule the week in the woods.
Yeah.
When we can.
Have we already done it?
We've scheduled the week in the woods?
No, I mean, we've already done the
We do got a segue.
Fullness.
Okay. Because I have other questions.
Fair enough.
We haven't even talked about...
I thought you were closing down the podcast.
Oh.
I'm nervous.
No, just maybe notifying the cabin that we are approaching the landing.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
But we haven't started our descent yet.
Love that.
The fasten seatbelt sign is not on.
Good.
You are still free to roam about the cabin.
I do have to pee, but I think we can wait.
Right now?
No, I'm just...
Okay.
All right, playing in your metaphor.
Thank you. So, you were the outreach director for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's been a few years away now.
Yeah.
How do you see the work? How do you see the missional endeavor of the ministry with time in the trenches daily? And it's not like you're removed from the work now, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's the kind of engagement you're doing with people now.
Yeah.
You're talking about many more things than only sexual integrity. I'm sure that's a significant component of it with many of these relationships. But you're also removed from the ministry on a daily basis. What does it look like to you? The shape of our culture, the urgency of the work. What's your 10,000-foot view nowadays? While you're collecting your thoughts, I am going to take a moment to bust your chops. Because what people might not know, depending on how long they've been attending the Naked Gospel podcast, you were, in fact, the very first host of the Naked Gospel. A fact that you forgot completely until we were hanging out a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And I was reminding you about that episode together that you made a really big deal of. You made it a really big deal that this was going to be the first episode of the Naked Gospel. And you couldn't think about anybody else that you'd rather have as the first guest.
That's true.
than me.
It's true.
So many years before anybody had any notion that I'd be working here full time.
I meant that.
And forgot it. You meant it and summarily forgot it.
For sure.
I had to remind you that you ever hosted it and that you ever hosted me on it.
Well,
And now we're here.
yeah, I don't know what to make of the fact that I think I did 2 episodes and then got replaced. So maybe that's an exile that I tried to tuck away, and the byproduct is you got thrown in there too.
I didn't want to get forgotten
I'm sorry.
with you.
Fair enough.
In the big deal that you're the first time.
Well, and it wasn't the naked gospel then. It was I wanted to look this up. I tried to find it.
What was it called first?
I don't even remember that.
No.
But I do remember the time. It was good. Now that you reminded me of it.
Marshall's Curios.
Yeah, that's good though. Looking for my own podcast name.
Mm.
I'm not. The long-windedness probably wouldn't be. Me just ranting in a mic doesn't sound appealing to even me, so I can't imagine it would be appealing to anyone else. Well, how do I think about the ministry? I'm going to get it back on time.
I've listened to the first episode.
and then forget about them. Forget they ever existed. So when I think about my time, 2 things come up. The people. There's people. I miss people. I miss some people. I don't want to say who, because if I don't name names, then
Other
Sure.
people get jealous.
Yeah.
I already know I'm probably not on the hits.
All right. Right. So.
Why'd you agree to that so fast?
Well, I don't mean like
Paper.
write it and you were right. I mean write it and I can understand how you might feel that way because of how terrible of a friend I have
I
been.
do feel that one.
I feel like I should pause and say, I'm sorry. Sorry I made you feel that.
It would be different if I was one of your intake appointments.
That's fair.
I can feel it.
That's fair.
I would have a lot to say about this friend that has neglected me for like a long time. Might be the primary grief I need to work
Well,
through.
luckily for you, the dual relationships wouldn't allow us to do that. So you could have some freedom there.
Might be lucky for you.
Yeah.
In this context.
Well, who knows? I think about certain people that I worked with who gave their time and effort and energy towards building out that which we were focused on here. So this ministry doesn't work without people willing to give an hour or more a week to this, whether through participant or through leadership. And there's something to that feels still sacred to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's friendships there that's weird that we don't communicate any longer.
Well, you cross the most intimate thresholds with each other.
Right. Yeah. Well, even some, I stayed at their house when I would go down. Right. And I know their kids and I wonder how they're doing. And they've got to be big now, right? Because I'm watching kids get big quick. It's like, wow, they've got to be, well, I don't know how old, but they've got to be huge. And yeah. And so I think about that often. And I wonder how people are doing and what their relationships look like. And if any fruit, what to the time that they spent and devoted to that cause. And if they're still doing it, a lot of the time.
I can tell you that many people remember you fondly. I don't know if I busted your chops about this yet. I think you actually sowed a conspiracy against me.
Oh, did I?
In the transition between your departure and my entrance. Because, we had a couple months where while you were planning the last steps of your exit, I was coming in and you were getting me familiarized with the systems and all that. There was other stuff. There were other seeds that you were sowing that would take me some weeks to discover. Because I talked to a fella from Texas, and in the conversation, he'd been part of the ministry before. And he says, I don't remember his name, but he had the most amazing mustache.
Yeah. The calling card.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
I was going to remember the classic handlebar.
Yeah.
I talked to another fellow that's from Ohio and, neutral. He's like, yeah, I don't remember his name, but he had the most amazing mustache. It's That's weird. Same exact words,
Yeah.
syntax and everything. I'm not messing with you. I'm talking to a teenager from South Africa. And he goes, I do not remember his name, but he had the most amazing mustache. I was like, Marshall's culture told these guys to say this.
No.
He lined them up because they said the exact same sentence, Marshall. It wasn't just commentary about your mustache. It was like they were reading from a script. You gave it to them.
That would be.
You stacked the deck against me.
No, that would be fun.
No one can convince me otherwise, especially not you.
All right, fair enough. It was an amazing mustache.
I still, at conferences, people come to the table looking for you, and they deal with the disappointment of me instead.
Yeah, and then they talk to you and they realize what an upgrade it was.
I wasn't going to say that part.
Yeah.
But they miss you initially.
That's nice.
At least.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that.
Your upgrades.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
I have only succeeded you. I have not replaced you.
Fair enough. I won't argue that. And the second piece, I think, I alluded to it first. It's like, I remember how hard it was just day in, day out, not talking to men on the phone, right, who were reaching out and looking for help, but churches just still feels. I need a deep breath when thinking about it. It's like just really disheartening. You don't really get much space to feel that when you're doing this work, because you have to feel it takes a lot of energy to make all those phone calls and be the spokesperson of something that's really great so that people might want to orient themselves towards it. And it's already an awkward phone call, like in our framework. I don't know if you're still doing it this way, but I'm calling on behalf of somebody within your congregation, which is already could be shame inducing. If I'm them on a bad day, it's like, well, my wife will say that. It's like, I'm tired and I have all these things to do and write X. And it's like, I can, on a bad day here, I'm not doing enough. It's like, so I can imagine that might be the orientation.
Like the pastor in question.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He's getting a report of another ministry failure.
Random guy. Yeah. Some random guy from some random town is calling about another random ministry. Because somebody reached out to him because, well, the point is you need some resources in your church to be able to attend to this. We're here to help. And I think I have a heart. I have a soft spot in my heart for pastors because I think I caught the glimpse of the daily demands of the ministries that exist, right? And so I don't remember who coined it, but the para-partner ministry as opposed to para-church ministry. We want to come alongside and we want to support and trying to do everything that we could in that space to make it as easy as possible, right? While not stripping them of their autonomy and responsibility so that there was some buy-in, it's like, and so yeah, when I look back, when I think about what I see now, it's hard to know when you're that embedded into that world, of conversations day in, day out. You have a sense that stuff's changing because you have a metric that tells you, right? It's like this many people are reaching out for help. That's an endless number that you can reach. But there's this many churches who have responded. And so since being gone, those metrics aren't really present. But culturally, there seems to be, well, there's definitely a shift as far as I can tell. Whether it's my algorithms telling me what I want to hear or not is a question, but there's a shift in the awareness of the lie of the sexual revolution. And even more broadly, the conceptualization that freedom exists outside of the confines of responsibility, right? And so I see that from the stuff that I'm engaged in, right, with the people that I'm engaged with. But I often I think about the people that I used to work with and miss them, and then I wonder whether or not that's an experience that's should be emanating from the church and isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And,
Mm-hmm.
2 years isn't, well, it depends on how you look at it, whether it's a short time or a long time, but I probably would land on the skeptical side of things that that's true, that it's not people outside of it reporting that something else is taking place. Right. And so that's a bit disappointing. And maybe that's just a reflection of like how many phone calls that I had with pastors that never went anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to be judgmental. I guess I am being, but I don't mean to be, right? Because I don't know what it's like to have to manage all the things that they manage day in, day out.
You're making a judgment, but you mean to do it without cynicism.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Because I don't know what it's like to be a pastor. I don't know what it's like to deal with what they're dealing with. And then that doesn't even take into account that not only are you have a role and a function that I don't know anything about, but also I don't know anything about you as a person, the things that are going on in your own life and your own story, and how complicated that must be with however many people that you're intertwined with within a congregation, right? Much less your own family and your own story. And so, but I see an intellectual uprising against the sexual revolution that's moral in nature, but doesn't necessarily emanate from, it seems to be emanating as a consequence of the failure that the church always knew that whatever mask you tried to wear, right, whatever thing you try to supplement the feelings that you have, the negative emotions that you're experiencing, the things that you're trying to solve through expediting dopamine or serotonin.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't work. And that coming from, in my experience, from outside of the church is disheartening.
It is fascinating watching on the secular side of things. You've got second and third generation feminists now decrying much of what they were raised in by the first generation feminists who already had their families when they began disseminating this gospel of you don't need men, or maybe you just don't need men as much, but whatever the particular branding of feminism, you had older women with families moving into this chapter of smash the patriarchy. And now you've got the later gen feminists looking around being like, kind of miss the good man factor and the family.
Yeah.
And having to be honest about the chronology of when they started this, and they're not getting the bill of goods they were sold.
Right.
Still plenty of noise, still plenty of smash the patriarchy. But even from within that camp, you're getting different voices that aren't maintaining the same narrative of the last 50 years. Even on the LGBTQ side, now we've got the voices of people that have detransitioned because of the heartache they experienced, and they didn't get this born again identity and the gospel they attached themselves to.
It's a good way to frame it.
When they transitioned, it didn't fix everything.
Right.
It made much worse.
Yeah.
Now, they don't want to put as loud a microphone in front of the detransitioners as they do the transitioners, which really tells the whole story. It's like, if you actually wanted authenticity here and you wanted people to YOLO to their heart's content, well, why aren't you heeding the detransitioners? Because now they're discovering what's supposed to be their truest self, but it's not in a brand that you're celebrating within all these rainbow flag variations. And so we're seeing havoc in their camp.
Yeah.
Where the lie of do what you want when you want, as long as it feels good, maybe don't hurt people along the way, but all of your feelings are indicating good things that you need to satisfy right away. That's essentially the gospel. And sex without consequences. Man, has that been alive a promise. If you've got the right medication, if you've got the right prophylactic, it's like, yeah, do it. Try not to have kids or diseases while you're at it. Otherwise, go crazy. Their own songs don't hold up that story.
Right.
How much shame. It wasn't Christians that invented the term walk of shame. We didn't do that. that came out of their music.
Yeah.
What is that saying?
Mm.
You can't even live within your own narrative consistently. Something has shifted on the church's side as well, because it would have been maybe 6 months or so after you and I had passed the baton. For the first 6 months, it was very much like you describe, where there was this implicit resistance from the pastors. And it was like I was trying to convince them.
Yeah.
Like, this matters. It's a big deal. And also, yeah, it's right there in your backyard. Otherwise, I would not even have had access to your contact info.
Right.
We're only talking because somebody from your orbit wanted us to talk. I don't know what shifted, if it was cultural, if it was God's spirit moving some kind of way. I wondered for a little while if I had gotten better at the job, but like 6 months isn't that much for somebody to get better. It's like 6 months means nothing in martial arts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
What's it going to mean in an executive role?
Well, 5 phone calls will teach you a lot about phone calls. That's for dag, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sitting with somebody over across the phone.
You get enough bad phone calls, eventually you got to do some good ones.
Yeah.
God willing, like, obviously I want to be getting better at it.
Yeah.
But something shifted where at the beginning of the call, before I'd had the opportunity to say anything,
Right.
the pastors were already more hospitable. There was a receptiveness of, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
It's like they weren't convinced, but they wanted to hear about it.
Yeah. Curious.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, curious and concerned.
Yeah.
And now it's still not even that long. We're still talking only 2.5 years or so. There are more pastors seeking us out because of the amount of people coming into their office, whether it's the marriage in distress, it's the guy that's offloading his confession, and they go, okay, let's do something. Sometimes they'll have attempted something of their own, didn't go fabulously. In many cases, they find us before they start a fire, and it always goes beautifully. Like, we don't ever have a church partnership backfire on us. There's never a scandal that erupts where it's like, well, let's leave a bad review for Proven on Yelp now.
Right.
It doesn't go that way. The worst thing that happens is it'll be lackluster. And sometimes you get a dud group.
Sure.
It's rare, but it happens. And that's the worst case scenario, is that it's just not fantastic. If they have the courage to do a second group, that one is going to go really well. I never see them dud twice.
Yeah.
You just have to give them the courage to move past the first perceived failure. But you know how it is. You're dealing with decades of addictive behavior. And it's going to take a commensurate level of intensity to counteract that. Not necessarily the same amount of time, but a commensurate level of intensity. And so it has been cool because, we were buddies the whole time you were on the job. And even, I think, 6 months or so, I knew that you were on your way out. At the time, we were still hanging out weekly.
Yeah.
Not in graveyard settings, but I would see you once a week.
Not Alaska settings.
For like 6 months, I was getting your weekly downloads on what's happening in the office, what's happening with your next steps, heading towards the next thing. Never once did it occur to me to think, wonder if I should do Marshall's job when he's done. It wasn't like I thought it and then said, no. Like, it didn't occur to me as a thought.
How did that happen?
Where'd the thought come from?
Yeah, or generally.
Yeah, in truth, it wasn't even the shadow of a ghost of a thought.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was not in my headspace at all. I'd been comfortable being my own boss for several years. And I also, it wasn't like it just didn't occur to me. There was 0 brain calories spent imagining myself in your position at all. Nick, the esteemed executive director, he called me out of nowhere, which never happens with me anyway, and asked if I had a minute. Like, yeah, I'd seen him a couple of weeks prior. I thought he wanted to follow up that conversation. And then he asked, I was wondering if you'd consider applying for the director of outreach position. I was like, oh, no, seriously, like, what do you want to talk about? He's like, no, I'm serious. I mean, Marshall, he's leaving in a few months. I was wondering if you'd consider. It wasn't a job offer, but it was a, would you apply?
Right.
It's like, no, seriously, Nick, come on. Like, what do you want to talk about? And Nick, like, he's not a tease guy.
No.
Razzing is not in his sense of humor. Very joyful, but he is not a chops buster at all. Still takes him 10 minutes to convince me that he's not messing around.
Yeah.
Then it takes him another hour to convince me that it's not a stupid idea. And we have that whole conversation, and he asked me to get back to him within a week. Like, yeah, I can make a yes or no decision in a week. Talk to my parents, talk to my spiritual sister, Adina, obviously, a few close friends, and then anybody that had a mentor, counselor kind of presence in my life. Wouldn't have been any more than 10 people at the most.
Yeah.
But this is the concert of voices that got to weigh in on that decision-making process. As fortune would have it, Adina and I were going over to your house that very night.
Yeah.
You guys invited us over for dinner.
It was the same day.
It was the same day.
Wow.
Nick had talked to me that afternoon.
Wow.
And so Adina and I show up.
Yeah.
We, high five, shake hands. I hear about more things I wasn't invited to hang out at with you, but we're at your house. And so it was all right.
You were invited.
Yeah, I was invited to that. It was good.
Progress.
So the girls, they sidle up in the kitchen. You and I go out on the front porch for a minute. And I tell you about this thing that developed with Nick that afternoon. And it was like, it takes me probably 20 minutes to taxi the runway and just present everything to you.
We share the thing on the tombstone.
We do.
Yeah.
We share. Let's stop calling it long-windedness. We are not averse to the scenic route.
I like that. Long way.
We like seeing the overlooks on the Blue Ridge Parkway.
We do.
And we will pull over and join them. We'll pull over and enjoy
It's really sophistication when you think about it.
I mean, if there's anything better than us, I don't know if I've heard it.
I need to show you some podcasts.
Oh, yeah. It's funny when you're not the host anymore. I'll tell you what, I won't forget.
You can't be mad. I was the host for 2 episodes and then I got replaced. Yeah. And so you haven't been replaced. How many have you done?
It's an act of piracy. This is. I engaged in a hostile takeover. I'm still trying to get Shane back on. We got to get life updates from him.
Yeah, definitely.
All his years hosting.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin anything, but he's in the thick of it with his first. So
yeah. Big developments. Yeah. So I really needed to know from you before I could consider proceeding with Nick another centimeter.
Yeah.
I had to know, would this be anything like dating a girl that you broke up with?
Yeah.
I think I even framed it that way. Yeah. It was like, then you see me entertaining this arrangement and it not causing any friction in our relationship. And dude, I spent hours knowing I was going to see you that evening. Knowing I had, you got to know. And I mean, if you had said no, that would have been the end of the matter for me. If you'd have been like, buddy, I can't. I'd have been like, that's it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have entertained it. But then you would have been contending with every other voice in my life that was saying, you absolutely have to go in this direction. That would have been interesting. I might have set up that cage match on a Zoom call or something.
Yeah.
Instead, for all of my anxiety, I asked you, and I finally had what do you think about this? Am I permitted to explore this prospect? I looked you in the face at that point, and you were grinning so big, and you just went, man, I love it.
I like your rendition of my voice.
You alleviated any angst I ever had.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
And there's been zero friction between us since.
Still love it.
I mean, you ignore me a lot more than you used to.
2 kids. Yeah. Unintentional.
That shield wall.
Yeah. You see it? You see how I use
it? Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Right. What are you going to do? Get mad at them?
Well played.
Yeah. He's 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That won't work when he's older.
I've never used my 6 kids as an excuse.
That is funny.
You want to get into that judo match?
I lost already. I lost thinking about getting into it. Yeah. I got the door closed to head to the match and I just reopened it. Didn't even turn on the car. Yeah, it's fair.
I looked at the roster and I saw I had a bye on that round.
Yeah, that was me.
Weird.
That was me in that instance.
Noted.
Well done.
You've also said many things to me over the years that have been illuminating as to who I am. Much of it has been how I affect people. You've been able to hold up a mirror. But you've also x-rayed me just for me. You've held a mirror up to me for myself. Other people not even in the picture. The gift of your friendship has never come with any pettiness or drama. I can't recall if we've ever had a disagreement that was more than a slight difference of opinion.
Yeah.
We've explored quite a lot together.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something. I could probably think like maybe that one time there was but it still was a who cares.
Right.
It was never significant.
Yeah.
It's always been easy to find resonance with you. And you've only ever been exceedingly kind in how you communicate your regard for me. I love you.
I love you.
I cherish that you exist.
Same. There's an aspect to your friendship that highlights what we discussed earlier in the who I am and where I'm not at. In that, there's something about the way that you care and sit with me that frames, well, you know me. We've had a lot of life together, and yet you still think of me as highly as you do. Illuminates that there might be something there that's worth it, right? And maybe he sees something that I can't in the midst of all the things that I'm going through. And so, similarly, that I've been a mirror to you to be able to see more clearly. You've done that in my direction in your, what I would consider your hospitable take on who I am and your delight in it. It's been a real gift. So there is a part of me that doesn't want to let you down, and so, but I think, I don't know if I've told you this, but I wondered how a woman who was thrown out naked in front of a crowd could be told, well, who's condemned you? Neither have I. Go and sin no more. I wonder what she might feel like. What I just described and how what your friendship, the gift it is given, reminds me of, I think that I might feel that way when spending time with you. That there's, because of how you think about me, there's a realization of the work that is still yet to be done. Go and sin no more. Yet the friendship and the endearment and care and value that's present in your friendship is the neither have I. Right? And so I like to imagine that she felt a lot like I do when we hang out, that there's a encouragement, demand, maybe even for more, better, through the, well, it is finished, and delight. So thank you. I love you.
It's a lovely sentiment. I am really glad to hear that you feel that way, because I do only have a entirely positive perspective on you. If I was going to be granted unfettered access to everything that is Marshall, I mean, and that's all of us, right? Like, there's going to be something that's repellent.
Right.
I think there is a chapter we can live into where we are so thoroughly formed in him, and we have consistently presented ourselves in obedience so that we are just beautiful all the way through. Not like we ever get to coast, but the command to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, that seems to be one that many expressions of Christendom like to be like, well, he didn't really mean that, because that's impossible. So are you really telling me that Yeshua is going to taunt us with an impossible command? Or is there something different in that invitation than we've imagined? And does our reckoning with the term perfect mislead us as we think about living into that? Now, it might not be the sort of command I can fulfill right away, but in my lifetime, can I progressively live into that being whole, like my Heavenly Father is whole?
Yeah.
being complete, being healthy. You know, when we see a young tree, we don't ever judge the sapling by the standards of the sequoia. Instead, we see what it has the potentiality to grow into.
Yeah.
But we're never like, check in another 200 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Look at this. Like, it's like, it is perfect
Mm-hmm.
for its current station in life. And it's also growing.
Mm-hmm.
It is becoming this and more. And how beautiful is that? That we get to be present to each other in various chapters of our lives.
Very. You said, how beautiful is it?
It is very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, like the way you said that, I paused because I thought you were double clicking on the greatest commandment. To love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your very.
I wasn't, but I like that you thought that I did.
Yeah.
Example A.
It's the literal translation. We read strength.
Yeah.
Because
what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
So we see it because like we see the verse translated differently between Matthew and Mark.
Right.
Where in one case we have all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, all of your strength. And then other times we just see heart, soul, strength. It's because in the Hebrew, there's only the three, the heart, the soul, the strength. But in the Greek imagination, heart and mind are bifurcated. And so for a Greek audience, you need more words to convey what's happening. In a Hebraic imagination, heart and mind are part of the same dyad, which in phenomenology, incidentally, you never have a thought without a feeling, and you never have a feeling without a thought.
Yeah.
So to keep heart and mind in the same continuum is helpful with our imagination. Your soul, the entirety of your life, the whole of you are your very. What is the very of your life? For some people, they are going to have very much wealth. For other people, they're going to have very much charisma. Everybody's going to have a different set of skills and native gifts and advantages.
So good looks for us.
I mean, yeah.
Usually. Very.
I mean, I know I'm giving this very to my wife, like all the time. Yeah. I'm sorry to everybody else. No.
I forgot which camera I need to look at, but I got it.
I'm now avoiding all the cameras.
Hard to make eye contact.
I'm regularly apologizing to Adina for having been a formerly handsome man.
Yeah.
So why'd you agree to that so fast?
Just listen.
Like right away. You're like, yeah, that's true. Look at this busted mug.
No, I can see you doing that without seeing your truth.
I don't trust you.
Well, if I'm your mirror, then...
Affirmation is not your very. That's what we've established right away.
That's true. This is true.
But the very is what is the extra that you have to bring? What is the distinctive superlative of you? What are the assets of which you have many?
Do you know that about you? Do you know what that is for you?
What's my very?
Yeah.
Yeah, aside from looks.
Yeah, we've established.
Record, yeah.
We have a couple.
Yeah, come on. There's dudes that I know are going to listen and they're going to remember weird conversations we had. And now I'm going to have a week of phone calls thanks to you. I seem to be gifted in listening to people in ways that are deeper than even they realize, so that without so much as a probing question, life secrets start spilling out.
Yeah.
Or this heartache that's fresh and they just haven't been able to talk to somebody about it yet. This thing that they've been carrying for, I think the oldest one is like 60 years, never talked to anybody about it. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
To be the first person. This had been part of my life, but Adina had to point out, she's like, that's not normal, right? Having these kinds of conversations with people in a grocery store.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
Yeah.
When I was in the trades and I'm getting lumber one day, and then I'm down in the lumber shed with the guy for 2 hours. He's confiding in me about his infant that was stillborn. No, he wasn't stillborn. He had SIDS. He had sudden infant death syndrome. And so they had a baby, and then suddenly one night they didn't. He didn't have anybody we're getting lumber. We're putting lumber in the back of a truck. And I didn't ask him anything like, is anything hurting you? Would you like to talk? There was nothing like that. Somehow we got there. So that seems to be a Holy Spirit superpower. Listening to people in such a way where they feel like they have the freedom to be without a mask, right? They can inhabit that space in the middle where they don't know what healthy looks like. They're very familiar with the stress, but they're trying to get away from that too. And being able to be an agent that helps them bridge that gap and imagine a way forward where this isn't the forever story. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of my I would agree. Being present with people. Mm-hmm. A mutual missionary friend of ours, he was one of the first people to point that out about me. And the way he put it, he said, you're always broadcasting a signal that people are safe with you.
Mm-hmm. That's the word I would use, secure. Yeah. Sense of security.
He said, you don't have to do anything. That signal is just emanating from you. Mm. And so how do I love God with that? To be intentional. If there's a thing that I have by default, it's going to go a lot better if I'm intentional with it. And also continuing to practice at it so that it's becoming more refined over time. It's been, 20 some years. Listening has been a concentrated practice of anything I've ever wanted to get better at. That's one of the few things that I've never stopped practicing. And so how the prayers have developed over the years. I never want to violate somebody's right to themselves. I don't want to peer at places where I don't belong. But I really want to be able to hear the things they wish somebody could hear. And in the cases where they don't know how to express it, but they still desperately want to be known in this way. I do ask for those insights for their sake. I definitely don't need to carry any extra baggage around for the fun of it.
Right.
But where have they been missed? Where are they trying to be seen? Where are they trying to find words? Oh man, I love those moments when I can express a thing and say, it sounds like, or is it such and such? And they go, yes, yes, that's it. And then they're a different kind of free.
Yeah.
They still have work to do,
right?
But that recognition, they have clarity now. And with a little work, they'll have solidity. I love those moments.
That's cool. Yeah, well, you can't. The first step into becoming hard stop, I guess, is I think being known. Right, there's a directional aspect to that. It's like what deeper and farther away into hiding or not. Right, and so creating the space, I think you are good at that to be able to. Well, it's ironic because I was thinking this as you were talking through the transgender issue of avoiding detransitioners. The metaphor as it relates to what we were talking about earlier about maturity. In order for that ideology to mature, it would require them to be able to orient themselves towards the false self or the ways in which it has failed. Right. And so using that analogy as a backdrop to the right, like in order for this to grow, it would have to invite those hard things, the dark places, the places that we don't want to go because it's too painful or we're too scared, and maybe rightfully so. And I think that's why I like counseling. I like the direction that I've went, is because what you just described, it's oftentimes the relationship is the means by which somebody comes to understand that those things are shareable, that they are knowable, and that, you can try it out in here and see how I respond. And I'm not going to respond like your best friend's going to respond because I'm not your best friend, but maybe you can get a glimpse of what, in my language, secure attachment looks like, what healthy relationship could be. So, I do have to pee now.
Yeah. We'll bring the plane in for a landing.
Okay.
You asked me a big question. It's good manners to return the volley. Have you found your very?
I wonder that. Which might be an answer. It might be the no. Shane told me that I am a storyteller and that I create hospitality through play. And I think that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I don't know. That has not been fleshed out. I'm giving myself space for that. But
Well, I can tell you, for my part, it means I'm never afraid of the consequences of the thing I'll say next. Whether it's grave or just stupid, clowning around.
Wow.
I'm never concerned with you taking a joke offensively.
Yeah.
I also know you're witty and it'll be a fun game of badminton if it goes that way.
Yeah, right.
It's an unencumbered relationship. It's, while it is daring, it doesn't feel perilous. That's a big gift.
Cool.
It's play, things might go wrong.
Yeah.
But this is the context where you want those things to have the freedom to go badly first.
Yeah.
And so the nimbleness with which we can go from clowning to deep in the pocket, like really wanting to sort this out.
By this conversation. Just immediately backing it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
No,
That's helpful.
and that's a facet of your very playfulness is a big one. And man, what a mastercraft talent to have. People learn the best in an environment of play. So if you are an agent of play, you're catalyzing the very best context for them to become most themselves. There's no better atmosphere than that.
That's good.
That's a cool superpower to have.
I'll take it. I'll take that very. See what I do with it.
And I enjoy being a beneficiary of your very.
I enjoy you being it too.
Thank you for having spent this kind of time with us.
Thanks for having me.
We have explored perhaps 5 to 10% of all I wanted to cover.
Sorry.
This will be our problem forever.
I'm always welcome to come back. You see how I just welcome us?
It was quite deft.
We'll do it over Zoom so you don't.
Oh, no, don't tell.
Make it easier.
You're indicating my difficulties with the technical side of things. Now you're outing me.
I just play
in public.
I'm just being playful.
Okay. Let's see. Back to the judo with the very now.
Well, you said.
I don't feel safe anymore.
Well, that's your job. That's your job.
I have to take care of myself on this side of the relationship too.
Unfortunately, in this case. Yeah. I have to pee, I told you.
All right. You're a good friend. You're a good man. I like it a lot that I get to be here in large part because of all the things you did before I ever got here. For anybody thought this would happen.
I'm glad it's been an easy transition from the work that I did. It means a lot.
The saga continues.
Indeed.
Well, thank you for having spent your time with us. This has been Marshall Shank, the OG Director of Outreach, and his fledgling successor, Wailer. We'll see you on the next episode.
And see.
And now you can be.
I have to be safe.